I got involved in the creation of the union because, first of all, the union representatives and the union people on campus were pretty persistent. And I must say that in the beginning, although I did agree with the purposes of the union, it wasn't really clear to me how it would come into being and what exactly the scope of the union was going to be. So I was a little bit ambivalent about it in the sense that I am a pretty shy person and I don't particularly know what to do, how to get involved, how into organizing things. So it was all pretty alien to me how this was going to work out. And I must say that the women, actually, organizers that came to see me, were all in pretty non-adversarial, were in fact very, very nice, very well spoken, very knowledgeable about various issues. And they kind of, dragged me out of my little hole little by little. As I said in the beginning, I was kind of dubious and also quite a bit scared, in the sense that I didn't think I would really have much to contribute. I am mostly occupied in my day-to-day work, which is basically teaching. Sometimes even trying to do some research about topics that interest me. I'm a part-time instructor, and so research is not really in my job description, but I do want to keep up my interests. So the fact that I wasn't particularly knowledgeable about particular issues on campus kind of worried me. As I said, I did not really feel that I could really bring much to the union in terms of any meaningful support. But when I started going to the meetings, I saw how many of my colleagues, both colleagues that I knew and colleagues that I didn't know personally but I knew of, were in fact taking this creation of the union pretty seriously, and I became more aware of problems that were really besetting our campus, our university, that I wasn't necessarily aware of before. Problems that had a lot to do with not the position of part-time and temporary and unclassified staff and personnel, part-time instructors that were pretty much at the mercy of or at the whims of particular department chairs. The way in which some resources were allocated, and there seemed to be quite a lot of misallocation of resources in pursuit that were not really necessarily connected with the educational purpose of the university. And so that also gave me an incentive to become more active, so to speak, or at least to participate more in what was going on in trying to create this union on campus. In terms of my personal situation, I have seen the benefits of having a contract, a real contract, which has been ratified by every member of the union. And what the contract has done in my particular case is really create a lot more order in the process of organizing the hierarchy of part-time instructors, and also in guaranteeing that the category of instructor is again regulated according to certain steps that in fact envision a upward mobility trajectory of sort. When I started being an instructor at U of O about 23 some years ago, I basically had to sign a contract anew every 3 months. And that went on for a very, very, very long time, even after I was granted a 2-year renewable instructorship. So there was always this kind of anxiety that came with, will the contract arrive? Will I be able to sign it? Will my appointment be renewed for the next 2-3 months, whatever? So now, of course, the union has put a lot of order in that process, and so now not only do I sign my contract every other year, which is certainly better, but there is clearly a path to promotion. And although instructors, especially part-time instructors, don't get tenure, I was recently, just after the ratification of the first contract, I was recently passed to senior instructor phase 2, which really, in addition to being a higher grade, entails also a higher salary. And that, needless to say, is great. I mean, one feels more secure, and also the position of instructor is also no longer something that is basically a kind of no man's land or no woman's land, kind of a limbo where you are stuck for an indeterminate amount of time. But it is definitely more secure. It has more protections under the bargaining agreement. And so overall, I feel more confident vis-a-vis my position in the department, my position on campus. And that in turn translates with really making me work harder to improve, my communication with my students, to do better in the classroom, to try to be more productive. So that has been certainly one very tangible benefit of having the union on campus. What I would like to see in the future for U of O is really a greater push toward shared governance. It's very important that faculty at all levels, through the faculty representatives, through the unions, and through the university senate, be really, really involved in making important decisions about the university. And quite frankly, I would hope to see a slowing of the trend toward the corporate university. I realize that it may not be possible to return to the university that was once upon a time run by academics for the purpose of education. Unfortunately, at this point, the university has become a business. It does feel like a business more and more as time goes by. Decisions are being taken out of our hands. Decisions are being made about instruction. Education are being made by people that are not really knowledgeable about instruction and education. People that are successful in a lot of different areas business and other pursuit. But quite frankly, the business model does not and should not be adopted for the university. A university is something different altogether. A university is more like a greenhouse, a nursery, and we nurture minds. So not everything should become a matter of numbers, of percentages, of quotas. Each student that I see is an individual, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Particularly in the humanities, particularly in classics, which is the area in which I am specialized, you cannot really wrap students all together in one package. I do object very much to the number, to the quantity versus quality approach. And incidentally, quality does not mean that we cannot have larger classes, but there is a limit. There is a limit, in fact, with respect to the kind of money that a student is required to put into his or her education. And sometimes I feel that warehousing students into large courses, virtual courses, technologically expedient courses, does not really work, particularly for the humanities. And the humanities are necessary because basically what we do is teach people how to think and how to express themselves. And you cannot do that by looking over an ocean mass of students, by having 500 students, 300 students in a class, and not being able to deal with the student personally, to tell them how to improve their, their performance in class, how to, in fact, attain those objectives that are the purpose of his or her education. And I'm not saying that the quantity approach doesn't work. It might work for different disciplines, but certainly not for the humanities. So I would definitely love to see a university in the future that is able to see the nuances between one discipline and the other, and adopt an approach that respects the various disciplines, instead of kind of downgrading teaching and education by, in fact, treating the instruction personnel, the instructional staff, be it tenure track or non-tenure, as simply cogs into this really large machine that churns out degrees simply because people are putting in a lot of money. And therefore, yes, well, they're putting in the money, they should be getting something for it. Well, as I tell my students in Latin class, just because you put in the money, you do not necessarily get an A guaranteed. You need to put in a lot of work. And what we are privileging nowadays in the new university is the kind of vending machine approach. You put in your money, you push one button, and you get whatever you have paid for. That is something that needs to, be redefined, needs to be changed, needs to be stopped. And so I really, really hope for the future of the university, not just of Oregon, but in general, that this is going to be taken into account. That in a way, we're not treating students as like some sort of a chain production machine. They are individuals. They are going to be, with any luck, the leaders of tomorrow, or even just the people who are going to make our nation progress one way or the other. And so we should really be able to give them a true education.